So I don't know how to change the brakes on my car. I don't know how to cook lobster thermidor. I don't think this is a problem. I don't know how to mill the glass that goes into the glasses. I don't know the optical magic that goes into that. I'd like to know these things, but it's not my job to know these things, and thank God there are people out there who know how to do these things. But I'm starting to feel a little bit of stress about the fact that there's not a whole lot that I actually make with my hands. The people who actually craft things with their hands, whether it's the people on Etsy or it's the people at Material here in Omaha, and they're making wooden signs and really building things. I'm starting to feel this envy for these people or people who know how to raise chickens and grow apple orchards. And sometimes I second guess myself, or go, well, what am I doing? We're pushing pixels and we're stacking up lines of code, and it's easy to get perspective that's too big and say, well, what's life all about? And you can go in weird places in your head. But then I remind myself that the people in this room, the software engineers and the designers and the people who send out finely crafted personal emails to your users, and people who write blog posts and think about these things, we're building worlds. Everybody in this room is building a world. And don't ever let yourselves think that you're doing something trivial if you're doing this online. We're building connections online. We're connecting one human being to another human being. We're doing really meaningful stuff. We're creating opportunity for people to explore who they are and create businesses and create their own wealth and support their families online. And there's a whole plethora of things that we're able to do online, from getting more efficient and processing what we need to do and defining who we are and making ourselves laugh and being happy and staying healthy and connected and solving problems. These are all things that we can do without ever really, metaphorically we say we roll up our sleeves, but we're not really rolling up our sleeves, right? We're just sitting, essentially what we're doing all day long. We may think we're kind of a big deal, and we are kind of a big deal. But, sorry to bring it back down, really we're just typists, right? Like, what do? We sit, here's the Groupon office. You sit and do this all day long, right? If somebody could have a surveillance camera of what I do throughout the day, you wake up and I've got my iPhone and I'm sort of like looking at this in bed, like checking to see what's going on. And then I'll get up and I'll do some of that. And he's just gonna go for a while, because that's what we do. I'll make a couple phone calls, maybe I'll go out and do some talking. But largely, it's this really uncanny thing that we're sitting in a room and we're saying that we're building worlds and connections, but we're just sitting there typing. And so it makes me think a lot about, well, okay, what's the work that we're actually doing? Like, what's the heart that we're bringing to things? And it's not a new idea that we're in an era of thought work. We're absolutely, our brains, the gray matter inside here, what little there is after a drink last night, is that's what our trade is. That's what our skills are. And yet nobody really gives you a way to learn how to think. They don't really give you a way to learn how to make decisions. This is what happens when you're done typing all day long. Maybe you fit in a little bit of time for this. So making decisions is what I believe is really at the core of how you run a company. It's how you, it's the value that you're bringing. There's no way to understate or to overstate the value of coming up with your own rubric and your own way of learning how to make decisions. So a story a couple of years ago, I was working on Squidoo, and I started to feel like my brain had gotten really, really slow. And it was in direct inverse proportion to the more I cared about something, the slower my brain would go. It was like, I really want to convince my team to do this. I'm really trying to pitch this big partnership, and I really care about this. And the more I felt like nervous, and this was a strongly held belief, the more my brain would sort of challenge and chug, and I was afraid that somebody wouldn't agree with me with this. And I got really pissed off at myself for a while, where I was like, I'm feeling just like I'm not thinking on my toes. And what's the scariest thing that I could think of was I'm going to go and study at Second City and learn improv. By study, I should say, I was like this, weird CEO boot camp thing, and I was there for like 2 weeks, and I tried really, really hard to fail at being funny, and I succeeded, which was great. And they put me up on posters with Bill Murray, which is like my entire goal in life is to be on a poster with Bill Murray. Ghostbusters quotes are like best. But there's something that I learned at Second City, apart from that I wasn't funny at all, and it was that. So here's this exercise. Believe me, we're not doing improv. Here's this exercise where you'd go out and they usually set the scene for you, right? So they'll say, you're at the top of the Eiffel Tower and it's a gorgeous spring day, go. And it's really hard if I enter that scene and I'm just like, all right. And if I enter that scene as Megan Casey, I'm like, there's all this complexity that is, I want you to know that I'm a sci-fi geek and that I love my dog and that I have a baby dog. Like there's all this stuff I want you to think that I'm smart, and you're trying to put yourself into that. And that's really hard to be able to say, okay, so you're at the top of the Empire State Building, or the Eiffel Tower, and here's what comes next. Sometimes your own self is too big of a framework. And so they taught us this trick where you could say, before you go into something like that, or even if it's like this meeting that you're really looking forward to, or a talk like this, you could say, well, boil yourself down to one thing that you're going to stand for, and it makes it a lot easier to have a framework for then what you're going to say next and what your decisions are. So instead of saying, Eiffel Tower, gorgeous spring day, and someone's like, oh, aliens, instead of having a difficult time reacting to that, you could say, like, I'm an 80-year-old woman and I like matzo ball soup or something really weird, and oh, I only have one leg. And so all of a sudden, like, you're sort of like this, and exactly, there's only a certain number of ways that you can respond to that situation. And so it's this metaphor, and people draw comparisons between improv and business all the time. There's another one that's the yes and technique, which is there's something in our human makeup that the minute somebody says, hey, here's what we're going to do, it's really hard for us to say, yeah, that's what we're going to do. You usually say, no, we're going to do something else. But that's not the way that you can build a relationship. That's not the way that you can build an idea. That's not the way you can build a team. So they teach you to say, yes, we're going to do that, because it gives you material to keep building on. But the stand for something thing, I really took away and realized that this was something that at the time was missing in my business, and it was something that I was trying to remember to do a lot more going forward. So before Second City, about 8 years ago, I was working in book publishing in New York City. It's a really cool job. It was like venture capital for books, right? People would say, I have this idea, I want to pitch you, you pay them in advance, you figure out how to develop the book, you help them package it, you help them distribute it. I was getting my MBA being a business book editor without ever having to pay out the money, which was great. I was working with, all of the big names in Silicon Valley before I even knew what was going on. I was in New York and I was like 22 years old, and that math doesn't work out. Anyway, I'm working with, Guy Kawasaki, and I met, one of my first authors was Seth Godin, who we became very good friends. I was his book editor on a couple books. And I started to feel this stress at Penguin Group, where I was, which was people were trying to, clearly, this thing called Amazon was out. This was like 2002 or something. WordPress didn't really exist. People were starting to pay thousands and thousands of dollars for somebody to set up an author blog for them, which was crazy. That's a whole side business that I did, and that was a lot of fun. And I was feeling this stress over, I wanted to help people sell books online. I wanted to help authors sell more books online. I wanted to help them get reach online. I wanted to get them distribution. Twitter didn't exist. Facebook was still closed. This was a really interesting problem to solve. And in working with Seth, he was talking about a lot of these things. And at one point, I said, I don't think book publishing is the place for me anymore. I think I'm going to go out to California, get my MBA. And he said, let's start a company instead. That's a turning point in my life. And so we started Squidoo. And what was funny is that Squidoo, within the first few months of releasing, got hijacked in a way that is, even though it looks really bad, was a good thing. And I like this idea of brand hijack, and I don't know why people are afraid of brand hijack. We released this platform. It was something, we were trying to call it the anti-blog, where instead of having a blog where you'd go deep on something and have to tell a story and earn a following and really spend a lot of time on this, you could create these single pages based on your interests or something that you know a lot about. It was a free platform, it was open, it was user-generated content, and you could earn money from it. If your pages did well, you could earn that money for you or for charity. Now, anybody and everybody in this room probably lines up those pieces, those ingredients, and say, free, open, user-generated content, and they can earn money, and you go spam, like, this is gonna be a bad. You have to figure out really what you're gonna say yes to, what you're gonna say no to, because openness in principle is good, but openness without guidelines or openness without a mission can be pretty scary. So a couple of months in, we got hijacked in a good way, which was that there were all these people that we never imagined would show up on the site. They're using it in ways that we couldn't even, in writing about topics that we never thought would happen. But it started to take our site in a direction where we didn't really know that we wanted it to go there. Like, all of these SEO strategists are realizing that they can make get a lot of traffic off of Squidoo. We had never said you can't do that. We had never stood up and said, here is what Squidoo is for. We dared to say, here's this platform, use it as you will, here's this sandbox. But after a couple of years of running that, there become certain moments where you have to know when you say, yes, this is what you can do, no, this is what you can't do, this is what you're going to stand for. It's a lot easier. We all get so many emails, so many people who want to talk. You're going to meet so many people here today where they're like, hey, we should keep talking, and I hope that you do. But there is no value in like the infinite yes, right? I would love to say yes to every interesting person that I meet, and that's great. And then there's Dave McClure, who's writing interesting autoresponders and saying I'm going to say no to 99% of the people because that's the only way physically that I can run my life. So there's constantly this like stress between how do you make a decision about who's somebody that's worth following up with, who's not. And there's not like this ultimate thing that you stand for in life. It's what are you going to stand for today? What are your goals? That makes it a lot easier to give yourself a framework. Again, nobody teaches you how to make decisions. You sort of make them, fail at them, and keep making them. And you learn you learn what you can say yes and no to. So Squidoo was I call it the 7-year overnight success. I was there for 7 years, and at the time that Pinterest shows up and does this, Squidoo gets to the same point, but it took, 7 years worth of really working our asses off to get it up here. And that was 7 years of really, really wonderful time, but I reached the point where I said, yet another decision to make. You have to look at, and these guys come next, you have to look at, what do I stand for? You have to make personal stand decisions, not just business stand decisions. And one was that I stood for wanting to throw myself back into the deep end. I knew that this company was working. I knew that the product that we made was successful. We were a profitable company. We were getting massive amounts of traffic. From there, it was, unless we were going to totally we're running it as a lifestyle company, paying ourselves, nice salaries, and that was what the founding team wanted to do. I wanted to keep pushing and dig in and go a little bit harder, and I wanted to scare the pants off of myself and say, let's try something new, and let's try something that really comes from the heart for me. Which leads me to Dogs in Omaha, and these guys who are right over here, you guys know the What Cheer team. They're fantastic. We've got John Hobbs, John Henry, Alex P. Gates. They are running Spun, which also, they haven't closed down their shop. They're just doing me the benefit of being my co-founders with Pack. So what happened was I started to notice some things about the dog industry. And yes, there is a dog industry. And I started to know some things about people who love their dogs. And when you start talking about this, you say, yeah, we're starting this company that is going to be dedicated exclusively to people who love their dogs. People get a smile on their face. If they don't have a dog, they don't get it. They're just like, really, this is frivolous and weird, and why are you going there? From a business point of view, when I see these three things even coming close to each other, that there is really this family love factor, that there is some of the top most shared content online on any of these platforms, on Instagram, on Vine, on Twitter, on Pinterest, are photos of dogs. When I see the buying power, if you start to profile the purchasing of people who own dogs and where they purchase online and what their habits are like, when these things come close together and you see an intersection with the dog at the center, and you don't see anybody doing anything in that space. I mean, forget the fact that I love my dog Luna. I have this big 80-pound Rhodesian Ridgeback. She's great. Forget the fact that I love her and that I'm crazy about dogs, but that makes a good business sense to me. I don't think there's anything trivial or frivolous about that from a business point of view. But what we're standing for is not, hey, we're going to create this place and make money and, you know, get the buying power of all these people and blah, blah, blah. What we're standing for is this. What we're standing for is that there is this slowdown that needs to happen in life. That the reason that people love dogs, the people that you have dogs, the reason that your dog is considered family is because they are family. There's this warm thing that you sleep with at the end of the day. They keep you healthy. You go outdoors. They keep you happy. There's something zen and simple about dogs. That as the noise increases, we're looking for this sort of calm happiness. And I can't think that there's anything remotely frivolous about being healthy and happy. I mean, there's billion-dollar industries run around that. So we're just trying to explore that a little bit. So PAC, these are the things that we stand for. I mean, yeah, you can say, here's this company for dogs. Simplicity, inclusion, love, warmth, health, getting outdoors. These are the basic fundamental things that I as a human being believe in. These are the things that connect us. These are what help us make the worlds that we're making online. These are what help us make the worlds that we're making offline. So PAC, the reason I'm going to share this next part about PAC is because we're talking about big decisions, but I'm also interested in how and why do you make certain tactical decisions. And I was interested in, I followed very closely what Tony has done with About.me and their launch strategy for that. And I'm remembering what we did with Squidoo too, where I have this very ardently held belief that the first 100 people or the first 1,000 people who touch the thing that you have made for them are the ones who are going to magically transport it into adoption and success, and they're the ones who really help you set the tone and the voice. And so we didn't want to just sort of casually say, hey, here's this thing and it's open and anybody can come in and use it, and guess what, it's still really early days and it's just a toy, and you're going to say, well, what comes next? We wanted to say, who are 1,000 people who love their dogs, and what can we do to delight them? And then we closed the site again. We opened it for one day. And said, anybody who wants to do this, anybody who really loves your dog, you can sign up. Closed it because I really believe that those 1,000 people then will say, if they really love it, if we've earned their love and their attention, they're going to go and want to tell somebody else about it. I don't want to go do any marketing. I don't want to do any PR. We didn't do that with Squidoo. We started with 1,000 people, so I'm doing this again. And it's something that I would like to say is working. We're only about 60 days old. We're still in a very private beta, but it's interesting to me that making that decision, there's a lot of other ways we could have done that. We could have, you can detail any other product launch, and it's probably fairly different from this. And but it was easier to make this decision. John Henry and I had lots of conversations where we're going, well, should we just keep it open because we stand for the spirit of openness and inclusion, and no, we're going to make it, invite only, but does that feel stupid these days because everybody's doing invite only, and is there a waiting list, and is that sort of overdone? And really it was easy to answer those questions, and we say, well, what do we stand for? We stand for this community of family that love and friend get a friend, and that's the way that this very social dog company is going to go. So, it's hard to bring that into an overall challenge to say, stand up for something, because that sounds like it's out of a movie, but what do you stand for is break it down into smaller parts, right? I would break it down into, if you're trying to make a decision and you need to say, should I stay at this job or should I do this other job? Should I start this company or not? Should I take this meeting? Should I not take this meeting? You say, well, is it something that you're standing for? Is it something that your company is standing for? And maybe what is the other person standing for too? But it's going to be really hard to just cast your net around and stand for lots of things. The famous line is that if you stand for nothing, you'll fall for everything. So that's something that I've learned in the course of a couple of years of doing this over and over again, and that's what I wanted to share with you guys today. So this is a fun thing that we've put together. I'm going to take some questions because I think that would be a lot of fun for you guys to be able to talk to a startup at the very, very beginning of our journey. But we put this together. It's just this fun little treat. If any of you love a dog, you're welcome to go to that URL. And even though the site is closed and you have to know somebody who knows somebody to get in, you can consider yourselves knowing these guys and knowing me, and you can add your dog. So I would love to take questions if anybody has any.
Before we take questions, can we give her a nice round of applause, please? Yeah, stand up. Give somebody a high five. Rip some paper in half. Shake your shoulders. Clap like you mean it. It's like we're having a revival here. Okay, we have time for a few questions. If you guys have questions, there's a microphone right where I'm standing right here. There's also one right on the other side. And since I'm the MC, Megan, I will ask the first question. Can someone please start that meme like we did last year about me starting the first question? This question is, I was fortunate enough yesterday to share a car ride with you to the hotel. And you have an interesting background. You were a book editor for a long time prior to Squidoo. So a lot of people in this room right here may be working in an industry totally unrelated to one they may pursue in the future. So if you're a book editor, folks that you'd be starting this site now, they're like, what? So I'm curious what's your previous experience being a book editor and that diversity there, what that brings to your current experience, if at all.
Yeah, so with books it was interesting where you got to see the entire, where I sat as an editor in business books, you got to see the entire life cycle of an idea going from somebody's head into somebody else's head, which is really neat. Terry Pratchett is one of my favorite. He's a sci-fi fantasy author. He has this cool line that you can light a fire for a man and it will keep him warm for a day, but you can set a man on fire and it will keep him warm for the rest of his life. And or you can light him on fire and he'll just burn. That was what actually took me into being in this literary world in New York, and it was really cool to learn. I mean, it wasn't at all a startup world. It was very corporate. It was slow. It was like molasses. People were averse to change. It was a nightmare from that point of view. But from this product cycle, from this idea to one head to another cycle, I learned stuff that when building consumer web companies, I constantly go back to what I learned there. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting overlap there.
Hi Megan, I'm Andrew. Thanks for coming to Omaha and talking today. As somebody who's lived largely on both coasts, I'd be really interested to hear a little bit about how you were able to make an initial connection with the What Cheer guys. And
that's my favorite story. I'm glad you asked. So I was working on Squidoo, and it was about 7 years in. And what do you do when you have this profitable, good company that people are visiting? There were more people. There were more writers on Squidoo than were reading the New York Times every day. I mean, this was going really well, and I was bored out of my mind because it was just this momentum, and I'm sitting back there sort of going, well, the smart thing to do is just let this go, and either we're going to sell the company or we're going to try to really make it go way bigger, and those weren't the biases of the team. And so while I was being bored, I decided I wanted to fiddle with the product a little bit. We hadn't updated some designs in a while. It was really just, we really stuck to our vision over the course of like 7 years. And in my interest to explore what this writing platform could be, I wanted to go completely out of house. I didn't want to have any historical company biases informing what I was trying to do, so I sort of went rogue, and Andrew Hyde introduced me to John Henry at What Cheer. And I worked with him, and I said, let's do this one-day sprint where you just throw your best thinking at this. And it wasn't just design, it was like, real experience thinking, what could this product be? And I think he took me on some sort of gimme or something, because there's no way we could have afforded these guys. I was just like out of my own pocket pretty much, being like, I'm going to do this project on the side for my own company. And he blew me away. I mean, it was like really this genuine empathy that he brought to the problem and the process, and just really good guy. And so I knew, I had this hunch instantly that whatever I did next, I was like, I want to figure out a way to work with this guy. And so when I was starting PAC, I tried out in San Francisco, I took a bunch of meetings with designers and developers trying to figure out what the right team was going to be. And the whole time I had this thing in the back of my head where I was like, I think I should talk to the What Cheer guys. And I didn't know John Hobbs and I didn't know Alex yet. But I remember sending an email to John Henry, and I said, I have a loaded question for you. What are you guys working on right now? And he writes back something to the ilk of, I have a loaded answer. We're trying to figure out what we're going to do next. And so I said, I'm getting on a plane to Omaha, and I think 48 hours later I was here. And we spent about 2 or 3 days together and decided to start trying to build, the MVP version of this. And along the way, it was completely a no-brainer that I said I invited them to be co-founders, and I'm extraordinarily lucky. It's a really good team. So Omaha feels like a second home now. I've been every 3 weeks flying, doing the Southwest flight back and forth. So you guys are great. It's a lot of fun to be here.
Thank you.
Hi, Megan. My name is Megan, and
You're Megan Hunt.
I'm Megan, yeah. That's me.
You're on PAC.
Yes, I am. I wanted to thank you for being here, and I'm so blown away by your business intuition. I find that so inspiring, and I wanted to ask you, what's the hardest thing that you've ever had to say no to for your own well-being and sustainability as a business?
I'm really bad at saying no to stuff. I'll say yes, 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 yes until I'm so overwhelmed and I have all these balls in the air and I'm dropping them and I'm letting people down and I'm forgetting to reply to emails and I'm behind on stuff because my nature is I want to say yes to all these things. And then I feel terrible. I mean, bumming people out and letting people down is the worst. So I've tried to, and that's why, I wanted to talk about trying to stand for something, because I don't want anybody else to have to feel that, and I think a lot of people do naturally want to say yes when they're presented with cool people and cool things. But I've had to make a lot of hard no's. I mean, you make no's every day, and small stuff like, no, we're not going to do this idea, this feature, because this is what we're standing for this week, and this is what we need to get done. I've had to do, leaving Squidoo was a big no, right? It was a really great team. We were still really small. It was going really well. I had just had a baby, so it's like, I'm going to take a 5-month-old and go and start a company? That's a really bad idea. And so a lot of people told me no, and the minute someone says no to me, it's a done deal and I'm going to do it. So yeah, saying no to Squidoo is, I think, a really big one that was hard to do.
Hey Megan, my name's Derek.
Hi.
Charlie and I are members of PAC. We're very happy there.
I love it.
I wanted to understand, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, how important is monetization in the overall thinking process of building a passion project like PAC, and where does it override some of your decisions that you make kind of at this point?
It certainly doesn't override any decisions, but there is absolutely a holistic point of view where we're building a business. And a business means that it is going to make money someday. It means that we're going to be able to sustain ourselves. It means that we're going to be able to create value. But creating value is more of how I think about it, where, clearly, if you are able to say, I'm building this thing that people love, and if that love scale can go like this, and that there is a want for it, that's value, that even if it might not translate to value to $1 worth of cash, that sort of relationship, there's value that clearly you can figure out where you want to translate the value later on. So for something like PAC, there's, I could say there's 8 different monetization strategies that we're certainly going to try and can try, but we wouldn't dare try any of those until we get the right tone set, we get the right first community set, we get people who love something and then know that we understand how to build something that happens to make money for the company so the company can keep running. But we want to make sure that we can build something that they will love, as opposed to just, hey, we're going to grow this community and slap a bunch of display ads on the bottom, and hey, we get so many page views, pages per visit, that we could right now. We get so many pages per visit that we could slap a glam ad on the bottom of these pages and, walk home very rich. But we're specifically, that's a good thing to say no to. We're saying no to that because we're standing for this simple love community first.
Awesome.
It's a good question. Believe me, I get it all the time.
And I also do a video project, and I'd love to interview you if you're going to be around
You bet.
later.
Megan, just one more question. And this is going to test your power of saying no. I have a 10-year-old dog. It's an Australian Shepherd at home named Zoid. Can you become a member of PAC?
No way. Absolutely.
Yay! Woo-hoo.
You can use the link we put up. Otherwise, I might know somebody who could get you in.
Awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, please give it up.
Thank you guys. Thanks a lot. It was fun.